Let's start with animals because I think this is good because it actually affects everything. So I'm not the only one that's talking about zoonosis. Zoonosis is the idea that animal pathogens pass to people. Spillover, the animal infections in the next human pandemic by David Quammen, Q-U-A-M-M-E-N. So he is a journalist that wrote a book about passing animal pathogens to people. Unfortunately, those kinds of books look like they're trying to scare people. So I'm not talking about it from that point of view. I just want you to understand that human beings, the pathogens that hang out around animals hang out around human beings, the same as. I would take the word pandemic out because I'm more concerned, as I said earlier, about things like antibiotic-resistant strains. But I will tell you the thing that concerns me about why animal issues are not dealt with is the thing that I'm concerned about, and almost every patient is concerned about, and people say it all the time, is I don't like going to certain places because I'm exposed to bad things. You hear that from people. Some people don't even like going out in public a whole lot because they're afraid of what they're exposed to, right? So they don't want to go to a daycare. They don't want to go to an old folks home or a hospital, right? And some people don't want to do things where anyone was sick. So if the person in the cube next to them was sick, they don't even want to go to work anymore, right? Because they could pick something up. There's more animals than kids in the United States. There's more animals than children in the United States. And every parent knows that the little runny-nosed kid is like infection central, right? I have a doctor who got his little daughter, when she was 3 years old, had a cough. He went down for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She was sick for a day. And he, like all doctors, said, kids carry these things that are just like, oh my God, you don't even want to get the kid flu, right? And the kids are swapping it amongst each other. I don't like the fact that dogs greet each other by smelling parts of their anatomy. It's sort of why I don't let a dog ever kiss me. I have clients and friends that they love it when their dogs lick their face. And I'm like, that dog was doing something else with that tongue earlier. And when our dog goes out to the horse ranch, that dog really likes to eat horse shit. Really does. Like it's like you gotta yank the leash hard to stop him. So dogs, people have their dog. I know good human beings that are really, clean and hygienic, and their dogs are all over them, and they think it's great. Come here and give me a kiss. And I'm like, no way. Not even interested in that. Now, I like my cats, and my cats sleep on the bed with me, and I'm all good with that. But I also know that if you go look in the New York Times, you can see that, sometimes there are these bugs that cats carry that make the old women that have 20 or 30 cats in the house go crazy because it causes holes in their brain, right? Those bugs will eat your brain away. So I'm very aware, since my cats go indoors and outdoors, and I know they catch things, I test myself regularly for the kind of bugs they have, and I'm taking stuff regularly because I know that my cats, even though I'm careful, I'm always exposed. So the story on animals, and I'm saying this because it affects neurology, and that's why Kevin was talking about neurology, I'm really careful about that. Every time I have one cat that's very friendly, one that's sort of friendly. The very friendly one will be on my lap as long as until he wants more food. And every time I pet him, his name's Sparky. So every time I'm petting Sparky, before I go eat any food, I get up and I go wash my hands thoroughly. But one day, I was petting him and my eye itched, and I literally just sort of went up and just rubbed my eye. I didn't think anything about it, but for the next 2 weeks after that, my eye would get inflamed really badly, and it was right where I had rubbed it. And every time I kept testing it, it was the same bugs that hang out around cats, and I was like, oh God. I would take something and go away. I'd take something and go away, come back, go away, come back, based on the weakness in my body. It started to actually affect things, not just in my eye, but it started to affect things in my thinking. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. So I called up a friend of mine who's an animal vet, small animal vet in Texas. Dr. Jody Kincaid. And Dr. Kincaid, I told him about how this progressed, and I had another symptom later on. So the symptom was that I actually had bleeding into my left eye. This was, yeah, exactly. This is a little dramatic, but it's worth sharing it. So I was going along, and I kept having this irritation, and then I was driving to work one day, and suddenly I felt like there was a curtain coming down on my eye. I mean, it was just sort of weird. I didn't know that I was bleeding. I didn't know my retina was detaching, right? Oh, yeah, it was sort of scary. Luckily, we got to it before it completely detached. So I drove home, went to the emergency room. They couldn't see past the blood. Then they sent me to another doctor, a special doctor, and she could see past and was like, uh-oh, your retina's detaching. So I went up to another person. This was all like in 3 hours, and I finally got to a guy that laser blasted, my retina and sealed it up. And about 200 laser blasts later, my retina stopped detaching, and I start to feel really good, and it's nice not to have a detached retina. As it's healing, I'm getting that same feeling I had from touching Sparky. And I'm like, oh, darn. I've been a victim of the same thing I tell people to watch out for. So that's when I called Jody, and I said, Jody, let me tell you what happened. And he says, Mark, there's this little microorganism that's so small that gets from cat's paws, it goes right through your skin. And it likes eyes. And he gave me the name of it. And I was like, okay. Got it. So I started testing myself for more stuff. And I have, we'll put it out on the website, I have a list. I've been trying to put together the exhaustive list of animal pathogens. I'm working on it because I've got a bunch of vets now as patients and their friends. And so I'm trying to get a list of everything so that you can think about it. And when I work with people, one of the things I do is I want to find out what kind of animals they live with, what kind of animals they have lived with, what kind of animals their boyfriends, girlfriends, father, mother, sister, brothers live with. And so that has an effect because that's, especially if you're living with an animal, your exposure is every day. So I know that I'm exposed every day to my animals. And I know you are too. And, I like to nuzzle my cat. I mean, I'm as close to my cat as anyone, right? So I'm inhaling all the stuff that's coming off my cat, and my cat's been catching mice and insects and birds and all that, right? Squirrels. So it's like, yeah, my cat's fast. You should see it. So I know that my exposure is constant. So all these people that we're seeing, when they think that they say, well, I lead a really clean life and I'm doing all this, find out if they have any animals that are around on a regular basis. And if it's not them, find out if the animals that their significant others, especially if they're dating, someone else has an animal, well, I'm allergic to animals. Now here's the other piece. This is also good for allergies. I had a woman that was deathly allergic to horses. I didn't know that. She was dressed in Prada. She was custom Prada. And she had some issues. And I'm testing her, and I'm finding liver stuff, and well, that's sort of interesting. And she never told me she had liver stuff. And I'm testing, and I'm getting over to the brucellosis file. And I'm like, farm animals. This woman's a CFO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't think she's ever been around a farm in her life. So it's the brucellosis file. It tests strong. I'm like, did you ever hang out around farms? Nope. Ever in your life? Oh yeah, I used to be with horses until I was about 13, and then I got deathly ill. Now I know because I'm around people that have horses. It's like, did you sleep with the horse? Oh yeah, and you feed the horse carrots with your mouth. And she was with horses till she got deathly ill, and she could never even be within a mile of a barn without starting to get asthma. I went in and cleaned up the brucellosis. She can now be back with horses. My experience of anyone that says they're allergic to an animal is I look for the pathogen that's underlying the ones that live with those animals. You clear that pathogen out of the person, and their allergy to the animal goes away. This has worked every single time that I've been able to get someone to do what I need them to do. So if you can work with them on that, that goes away. Why do I put this in with proprioception? Because this exposure is constant, especially if you really love your animals. Anyone here have animals and they're with you as much or more than kids would be? Yeah, exactly. So those patients, especially the really sick ones that don't have any family, they probably have a dog or a cat that they truly love. and they're with all the time, right? Start looking at that, and you may actually have to treat their animal to help them get well, because you're not just treating them, you're trying to, whatever the animal has, it's the re-exposure, it's the recurring nature of the infectious site, right? That's continually going to keep reinfecting them, right? They would know if someone in the cube next to them was sick, they would avoid. But their animals live with these infections all the time.